Hello, thank you for tuning in. So, Matt, the academic officer obviously is a very topical role now to be going for, considering that we've got the strikes ongoing. In the election supplement, you mentioned that you've worked with the academic officer for 3 years. In what ways have you worked with the current academic officer?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me. Academic rep, to say it's topical is, I'd say, understating it. But as far as my past experience goes, I was a departmental representative for sociology, criminology in first year. I worked very closely with Matt Johnstone then in the when he was over in the maths department, when he was a department rep. In second year, I ran to be faculty rep, but was unfortunately unsuccessful. So I became another department rep for the second time. Again, working with Matt Johnstone when he became academic officer over 2020. He's a brilliant guy. I almost consider him in some ways a mentor because he's taught me so much about the role and how to go about collecting the best feedback possible from students.
How do you think that Matt's how do you think he's handled the strikes? What would you have done differently were you in his role?
I think that's a very difficult question because the strikes this is a very complicated issue. I know there's issues with the teachers' union and their pensions. And personally, having worked closely with Matt, now being a faculty rep, I can see that he has done pretty much everything he can to try and alleviate the strikes. I mean, most recently he's been doing this postcard endeavour where sort of asks students to sign these cards and they get sent to Charlie Jeffrey. You can voice any concerns you have or support even for the unions as well. And having read some of those postcards, there is a strong mix.
Right, let's move on to some of your manifesto points, Matt. So, Matt, you mentioned about a 24/7 study space for students, and obviously before the pandemic, the library was open 24/7. Why do you think there's been... why have you decided to put this in? Do you think there's a general frustration in the student community that the library is no longer accessible for 24 hours a day? And when you say study space, is that just the library, or would you like to open more areas which can be open for 24 hours a day?
Absolutely, I'd love to open more areas. That's one of the key concepts in my manifesto, because as great as the library is at current, you still do have to book a lot of the spaces, which can be annoying. Having an open 24/7 study space for students who can go and study whenever they like, I feel would be far more accessible, and having it a bit more close and personal, I think would really help the student community.
So now one of your second points you mentioned in the manifesto is implementing the equality, diversity and the inclusion strategy. And you may have seen that one of the main issues, one of the big stories at the moment is News's the former disability officers resigning. How would you go about trying to ensure that the union is more inclusive? What would you do?
Well, this is a great question. In my past few years, I've been working very closely with departments to try and decolonise the curriculum. And a lot of the stuff that I've done translates really well into this strategy that the university are trying to do. And my key thing is, the university is doing a terrific job with it. I think they could just do it quicker and more efficiently. And that's all I'm going to try and improve, because as academic officer, you do only get 1 year. So I'm trying to be somewhat realistic with my manifesto points, because I know sometimes you get these people who put all sorts of stuff on their manifesto, and you just look and you say, that's not feasible at all. So my whole thing is, look, the university's doing this already. I think we could do it better, and I think we could have this turnaround in a year or less and have it just...
Where on your third point in your manifesto in the election supplement, you mentioned about auditing study spaces. What do you mean by the word audit?
Well, I think to audit is to examine. So what my third manifesto point says is to audit and improve current study spaces. But what I mean by that is I want to look at the study spaces we have and update them for modern students. All right. I've had conversations with the geography department who say there are far too fewer plugs and power sockets to use for your laptops and stuff. So even though geography might have a terrific study space, if you can't power anything in it, what's the point in going? If your laptop's going to die an hour or so in, that's not accessible, is it?
You describe yourself as energetic, eager and passionate. And your favourite place to hang out at the University of York is Courtyard, which is a good choice.
Absolutely.
How would you ensure that you engage with students? Would you have a sort of session where you're in Courtyard, you're standing there with a pint and then students come along and discuss issues with you? Is that how are you going to reach out to the student body? So, for example, let's take strikes. What would you do to ensure that, you mentioned Matt's postcard idea. What would you do to ensure that you're actually connected with the students?
Well, I think one of the things that Man Johnstone has done somewhat poorly is social media outreach. As you know, SABs are supposed to make sort of 1 to 2 posts on social media a week. I think the last post that Matt Johnstone did was more than a week ago. So I don't think he's properly trying to project himself out to the student body, which is, if you look at my social media, you'll love it, by the way. It's fantastic. But my social media is focused on trying to do as much outreach as I can. I think we've just hit about 100 followers or so in under 24 hours, which is fantastic. That's exactly what I'm going for. So social media, as well as tying it in with personal events like Courtyard, I think is definitely the way to try and outreach as many students as possible, because not everyone is doing one thing. You know, not everyone goes to Courtyard, not everyone is on social media. So having a good blend is how we're going to get student feedback.
And we're coming a bit close to the end of the interview, but how do you think you are different from your other candidate? What do you offer which Deb doesn't offer?
Experience. Plain and simple.
So that's your
experience.
slogan. So your slogan is vote for the best, and it's based on experience, is it? That's your selling point.
Absolutely. I've done this role for years. I know what the students want. I know how to do it.
Okay, and we are going to carry on with the line of questioning about the strikes. We've only got a bit of time, so if you can make your answers concise. So with the current strikes, do you think that the way that the union has interacted with students, do you think that's the best way to go about it in terms of gauging their mood?
I think it's very difficult to gauge students' moods as a whole. Turnout for voting has historically been poor. So I think, again, is blending it. Social media, in-person events, even the postcards like Matt Johnstone, the current academic rep, is doing. I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, and we're near the end, so one thing I would like to ask you so students know where they can contact you is, if students have some questions for you as the campaign goes on, where can they get in touch with you?
They can contact me on my Instagram account, mattbest4academic, or even email me, mptb500@york.ac.uk.
And finally, a quick fire question. Which do you prefer, news or vision?
Ooh, don't put me on the spot like that. I like Vision's movie reviews more, but on the whole, I might say news.
What would you do on a Sunday afternoon? What would the activity you do?
Have you been up to the museum gardens?
Yeah,
they're lovely. I do like them. There's a bus, the 10, that just takes me straight into town. I can just do a lovely little walk down there.
And academic officers always need some time to relax. So if you're going clubbing, which club would you go to?
Cuda, 100%.
Cuda.
100%, yeah. I like the tiki bar.
It's no longer. It's not as busy as it used to be in the first year.
No, unfortunately not. No, I do have some good memories of it in my first year. I'd say I've got more than one embarrassing picture in the tiki bar at Cuda from first year.
And finally, your favourite spot on campus if it's not Courtyard?
That's a good. I'd say Greg's place, because I like sitting there looking over the lake.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I hope
thank you very much.
See you soon. Thank you.